Hi, everybody. I think most of you know me. My name is Chris Jager. I am the fiction book buyer at Baker Book House in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And I am looking forward to seeing you guys here in the store in a couple weeks or even tomorrow, depending on when you're viewing this. So I'm just going to do some book reviews here. I'm just going to run through them. I am going to try to remember to give my email and then Jessica's also. And that way, if you have any questions ahead of time, you can gladly email either one of us and we'll kind of go from there. But if nothing else, you can always call the store too, but I think most of you have my email. So if I forget to give Jess, just contact me and I'll get you in contact with her with no problem. So I'm going to get started with one that came in yesterday, and I'm very excited about this book, A Piece of the Moon, for two reasons. On April 6th, I get to interview Chris about his new book, and you can get the tickets on our website if you want to join me, but I'm also excited about it because it's a really good book. I don't know if any of you have read other of Chris's books, but he's such a good storyteller. The characters are people you want to get to know and you want to live by them and you want to just enjoy their story. And Piece of the Moon is just like that. I have never had an urge to live in West Virginia, but he kind of made it sound like a really cool place to live. So if you haven't read them, I've got a big list of other ones you can read of his. I've read them all. I've enjoyed them all. Dogwood and Junebugger too, that people remember a lot. That those are some of his earlier ones. So if that rings any bells with you. And then Jamie Jo Wright's new one, The Haunting of Bonaventure Circus. I have called it Buena Vista several times, and I just told her she named her book wrong, which makes her laugh, which is always good. But she has really good dual time books. They got lovely mysteries in them. They've got a little bit of a creep factor in it, but they also offer lots of hope and encouragement. The characters always have some sort of real life issue, whether it's something themselves physically, or something they themselves are struggling with, or somebody in their family, whether it's a handicap or something along those lines. So, and I think that's why I really enjoy her books, because again, just like Chris, her characters are real and people you want to know or know. You can say, oh, I know somebody with a family that has a child with autism. And so now I know a little bit of what it's like to live with that. So this one, yeah, it's got circus and there's a baby elephant you're going to fall in love with. So just be forewarned. Nightbird Calling by Kathy Gokey actually is a wonderful World War II book, but it's at the beginning of World War II and it's set in America. And there's very little to do with World War II. It's just the time frame. It has a lot to do with generational abuse. So not just parental abuse, but then a marriage abuse and a spousal abuse too. So it's not an easy read. In fact, if you know somebody that experiences it, it might have a few triggers in it because there are times where things are happening and things are very aggressive. She doesn't go into gruesome detail. Please do not think that. But you know what it's like to be stalked by somebody, especially if they're your spouse. But you're also going to know what it's like that they're dealing with racism. So like I said, it's not an easy time to read or an easy book to read. Part of it is because of the time frame. We're getting out of the Depression and things are looking good, but yet it's still depressed in this area. Racism is running rampant. The Klan is running towns and getting away with a lot of things, including lynchings. So like I said, it's not going to be a light read. If you're looking for something to get away, this is probably not that book, but it's so good. So I want to recommend it. Again, with Kathy, if you haven't read any of her books, I would strongly recommend hunting any of them down, especially if you like World War II books, because she's really got some good stories. Till I Want No More by Robin Pearson. She hit the market last year, just a little bit before COVID hit, but I guess you know what? My daughter says we do this. We all ignore 2020 and we just pretend that 2019 was last year. I just did that. Her first book came out in 2019. This one came out in 2020. See, there you go. But it's the sequel to the first one. And I am going to draw a blank on the name, which I was hoping on the back, but it's on my list. So hold on. A Long Time Coming is book number 1. Now, this is a loosely tied sequel. You could probably read them in any order. I recommend them in order because you're going to know what kind of happens in the first one if you don't. But this one deals a little more with Maxine, and she has a secret that she's been keeping since basically high school. And a few people know about it and few don't. And so as her wedding approaches, she has to come to terms with this secret and who she should tell and who she shouldn't. and who it could hurt and who it might help. So well done. Robin is a good writer. She writes good Southern fiction. It's just that type of story where you feel like you should just sit on the front porch and grab a cup of iced tea, sweet iced tea. Gotta have that, and just enjoy the story. Things We Didn't Say by Amy Green. Fascinating little story. It's set in World War II, but it is in Minnesota at a prisoner of war camp. And what it is told in, I don't know if you can see this, I'm sorry, but letter form, which is a little bit different. Those of you that read the Guernsey Sweet Potato Pie, whatever book, I can never remember the title, but it's along those lines where everything happens letter form, where they're writing each other back and forth and stuff. And this is really neat because our main character here, Joanna, I don't know how she pronounces it. I always said Joanna, is actually recruited by the Army to help read letters of the prisoners, either coming in or going out, because she can speak and read German very well. So she actually is helping with that. And so, which is just kind of a different perspective, because suddenly these prisoners in the camp become human, because they're writing their mothers and their wives and their children, and maybe even their sisters and their grandmothers. And so suddenly you don't see them as necessarily the enemy, but more as humans. So it's a different perspective on that. And, you know, this is one of those things you probably should have realized. There were prisoner of war camps for World War II on our soil all over the place. In fact, I found out recently there was one in Michigan, but who knew? I had no idea. I just figured we kept our prisoners over there because I don't know why. So it's nice to learn things from fiction books. The Dress Shop on King Street by Ashley Clark. This is her debut novel. And to be honest with you, I didn't know what I was getting into, so to speak, when I started reading this book. I just thought it was going to be a really neat story about somebody that wanted a dress shop, and it was just going to be her walk through that and using experience from somebody from her past. And it's much, much more than that. It deals with a lot of different things. It is a dual time. And so it deals with racism, but not only in history now. And it kind of combines the two, where, you know, when you think to yourself, you know, we're going to learn something, right? And we don't. We're still the same terrible racist people that happened many years ago and are happening now. So, but the story itself is just a delight to read, because you will fall in love with the characters, both the one from history, which is Millie, and then our Harper, who is our main character in the modern time, and their struggles to fulfill their dreams. Facing the Dawn. I can't say a lot about this book, because if I do, it's going to give away a major plot part of it, and it happens really early in the book, and I don't want to do that. So this is Cynthia Ruchie's new, okay, I said that wrong, and I said it when I was talking to her. It's Cynthia Ruchie. I think I said it right that time. She was schooling me on it, and then I promptly got it wrong. So it worked out perfect, you know? But anyways, brilliantly written. If you have not read any of these, start here. It's just a wonderful one to start with. They're all her books are very issue driven. Some of the issues that this deals with is like grief and loss, but also a little bit on single parenting. What's it like if you have a spouse that is off doing something that's very heroic, and you're the one at home trying to hold the life together? And so there's all these different things in there. So, and there's more, but again, I don't want to say them, because then I give away a major plot thing, and I don't want to do that. So I would probably recommend maybe a box of Kleenex with that one. The Waterkeeper by Charles Martin. I know this one was out a little while ago. I'm kind of stretching it back here, but I wanted to mention this one because book number 2, The Letter Keeper, is due out soon. I recommend you ordering it. I don't know if it's going to be here before you guys come and visit, but you can always special order it, and we can always ship it then too. So we can figure that out. But the whole series is dealing with human trafficking. Not only the women that are in kidnap, but how are they recovering, and what best can we do to help them move on with their lives, and the message they have to hear. And Charles wraps in there a lot about God. Some of it is a little more subtle, but one of the major themes he does push in there is that they need to know that there is a loving father, and there is somebody that loves them no matter what their past is all about. And that's probably why I really, really, really like this story. So again, he doesn't go into graphic detail if you're worried about that, but it will have some triggers if somebody has some of that in their past. So just be aware of that, and just know that I personally This is just my humble opinion, but I like 2 even better than book 1. And I'm not going to tell you why, but maybe in October, by the time it's out, I'll let you know why. So, The Promised Land by Elizabeth Mauser. I got to tell you, when I first started reading this, I hated the main character. I really did. In fact, part of the reason I kept reading it so I could yell at her. So, so just know that you're going to have that in there. But it's a neat story of a pilgrimage that happens with a mother and a son, and then a young lady that the son is interested in, and how that all happens, and what they each learn along the way in this pilgrimage. Because each pilgrimage, now whether you would go to France and and who doesn't want to do that? I'd rather do a pilgrimage there than in Zealand. So, but anyway, so how each pilgrimage and how each of our own journeys are our own. Nobody else's journey can make me complete. It talks about that a lot, how we rely on our family and our friends to make us happy and content, and things don't go our way and then immediately we're all upset. So it talks about that a lot in there, and I really, really like that part, because it was really a good reminder during this time of pandemic, with so much of it's been out of our control. It talks about who is in control. So I really, really appreciated it. Years ago, she wrote a book called The Swan House, and that you find out about a few people that were in that book in this one, which was kind of a fun find. So, but I like Elizabeth's book. She's got several out there, so please feel free to find more of them. But this Promised Land one, that's a good one. I've really enjoyed that. The next one I have here is Trial and Error by Robert Whitlow. He's written some really interesting books set with a couple that were part of Israel and things like that. And it's kind of a spy action adventure movies, or not movies, that would be silly, books. But he's gone back to his own throwback here, where he's writing just a plain and simple good lawyer book that has a little bit of a mystery to it. Our main character, and I'm going to forget his name, Buddy, hard name to remember. But anyways, his girlfriend was pregnant, and then the week the baby was born, she ran away, and he has never been able to find her. But he has made it his life mission to help other families find their missing children. And so as a lawyer, he can do that a little bit easier. So, so there's a lot of ties in there together, and such like that. So I don't want to give any plot twists or any of that away. But no, it's just if you liked Robert, even his recent books, I'm not saying they're not, but if you liked his past books, this one is going to remind you of a lot of those. So like The List and stuff like that, where you just have a really good lawyer book. So that's why I like to read Robert. Also, I should mention, great guy book. Some of you ask me that all the time. So the next book I'm doing is also available in softcover, but I only had a couple of them on the shelf, so I grabbed the hardcover one instead, by A.K. Pittman. This is actually a teen book, Pudge and Prejudice. And yes, it is based loosely on Pride and Prejudice. And I read this, and I had all these throwback memories to when I was in high school in the 80s, sort of a little bit in the 80s. How's that? We'll go with that. Yeah. But anyways, and so all the things they're talking about, I am just laughing my full head off, because, they're talking about cassette tapes and how you did that, and the Walkmans and all the different music. And so that was a lot of fun. But it also reminded me of some things that happened in school, which not is always comfortable and is fun to remember. But I did happen to listen to Pride and Prejudice after it, just to compare notes, and it's fun to find that in there. So those of you that know the book well are going to thoroughly enjoy reading that anyways, but it might also get somebody interested who has never read Jane or has never liked Jane to go, hey, read this one. And then when they ask questions, you can say, well, let's read Pride and Prejudice too. So suddenly you got the teens reading classics. So, but on its own, it's a great teen book. It really is. It talks about the struggle of being in high school and trying to be the super cool kid when your sister's the super cool kid and you are just the nerd that is trying to make it through school without getting yelled at every day. So, so anyways, and that didn't happen to me. I didn't get yelled at a lot. I just was the super nerd. So anyway, so yeah, so A.K. Pittman, who you will know as Allison Pittman. I actually have one of her other books in the stack also. So she had a couple out this year. So, and I know Allison and I know her writing. It is so good. And then one of my favorite ones that came out this year is The Moonlight School by Susan Woods Fisher. This deals with illiteracy in the Ozark Mountains. It is actually based on Cora, who actually did get the schools started for the adults in the Ozarks. And it's kind of how she did it step by step. Wonderful story. The reason I like this story, and I've kind of been on a kick, and I'm not trying to be super feminist or, any of that. Men are not bad. They're not evil. But I love reading these stories that are starting to come out about women who did things in history because they needed to be done. They didn't do them for fame. They didn't do them to be put in the history books. They did them because it had to be done. Cora said to herself, I have more illiterate adults in this world, in my world where I live, than I have anything else. How do I teach them? Well, first of all, she got elected to the school board, and not only to the school board, she got elected president. Unheard of, but she did. Then she started the schools and made them smaller and spread them out so more of the Hill kids could reach them easily. Um, and that was working wonderfully. And so then she started the Moonlight Schools for the adults. And we know the story, so I'm not giving anything away. And the schools did fabulous. And I love that. And here's a woman I didn't know anything about until before this book. I did hear her story before this book, but recently she's not in a history book. She should be, because I know I can remember as a little girl thinking, did women do anything in this country before, well, like the 60s? Because that's when I knew my aunt and uncle, my aunts and my grandma, and found out they were doing a lot of things, and my mom, but it turns out, they just weren't listed. So finding stories like this, there's another one, Jane Kirkpatrick writes about a bunch of those kind of women that just did what needed to be done at that time, and they didn't care. So that's part of why that's one of my favorite books. So. And I'm going to do another little plug, and I won't do it long, but yeah, so I get to talk to Susan tonight because we're recording this in March on the 23rd. I'm hoping some of you could join us, but her new one, The Nature of Fragile Things, again, there are some really good plots in here. A couple things I saw coming and a couple things I did not see coming, and it made the story so fun to read. It is centered around the earthquake in San Francisco. And what was it like for a city of millions to suddenly not have a building to stay in? The ones that stayed standing weren't safe. And so what do you do with these people? And then, of course, the city starts to burn. So now what do you do with the people? And she talks about that. There's a lot that goes on in the book, as most of Susan's books have. And I love that part. I have read, I think, I was going to say, I think I've read them all. I know I've read them all because I went through the list again the other day. And every one of them is unique in its own way. And, it's interesting because I would have to say the Christianity part of it is very low in the book, but yet all the way through the book, the characters wrestling with not only if God is good, why is this happening to us, but some of the other things that happened in her life and why would they happen to her, and such like that. So I'm like, well, the Christianity is pretty high. She just doesn't necessarily mention God or a Bible verse. So it's more like maybe what we go through in real life. And that's what I like about them. So they're very thought-provoking. I can't wait to talk to Susan. Hopefully, like I said, you can join us, but she's going to do some of her history. So definitely look it up on Facebook if you're interested. So, but the book itself, wonderful. Lynn Austin's new one, again, I know this one is from a little bit ways back, and I'm pretty sure you guys have read it. But she's got a new one coming out in June. I think it's June 8th. And so this is If I Were You. It's a little bit of a dual time. I'm hard put to say dual time because it's not that far apart and it's the same people. So I don't know if it quite qualifies. I guess I don't know the actual definition of dual time. But to me, if they're all within a few years of each other, I'm not sure. And I'm going to use it on another one that's going to be the same way. But this one starts in World War II. It's about two young ladies that knew each other. One was the maid's daughter, and one was the house owner's daughter, and they became friends, sort of. And I'm going to let you read it if you haven't already. And it talks about how they survived World War II together and not together, but it also talks about what it was like after the war. And that, I think, was what that part of that storyline is what I found fascinating. I mean, the war, it's Lynn's writing, so of course it was good. But the fascinating part was the after, because I've read a lot of books about World War II, but not about the recovery and what it was like for the people recovering from the war. Because, I mean, England was bombed a lot. And so it wasn't like, oh, the war ended and we just picked up all our stuff and we went back home again. There wasn't a home. And so how did that affect them? So it has some serious notes to it, and I kind of like that part of it. So, but like I said, it's Lynn's writing. You can read it. It's very good. Set the Stars Alight, Amanda Dykes. This is her sophomore book. She had one last year from a title called something else, not this. And I'm blanking on it right now, but there you go. So anyways, you can look it up. It's really good. I really enjoyed it. I really like this one too. So, oh, whose waves these are? See, if you look through the book, it's right there. Anyway, so this one actually has 3 different little periods of time when one of the main characters, well, 2 of the main characters are kids, when they're adults, and then something back in history. So and they all kind of weave together really nicely. It's set in a small countryside in England, which makes for always a fun read. So I really liked it just because it was a good story. I mean, it's not going to solve any great problems. It's not going to, make you go out and do anything. It's just going to be a good story that you're just going to enjoy. And to be honest with you, that's why I've liked both of her books. I shouldn't put it back on the pile of stuff I'm going to review, because then I'll review it again and it will be silly. So another Amanda, and I have a conspiracy theory that new authors have to have the name Amanda, because there's like 4 or 5 of them in the last 2 years with debut novels, and their first name was Amanda, and it's very confusing. This is Amanda Cox, and she has written a dual time that is like where I struggle with it, because it's the same character, and it's at the beginning of her life, and then she's like 20 something, and I'm like, can dual times only be so? See, I don't know the definition. I call them that because that's what I'm told to call them, so I do. But anyways, this is the story of Rose, and what is her history. The beginning is about when she was a baby, and then of course the main story, which is a contemporary story, is when she is still trying to figure out who she is and why and who her family are. There are a few issues in there besides adoption and homelessness. There's also an abusive relationship. So the issues are all in there too, but again, they're weaved into a story, so it makes it like something you're talking to your neighbor about. And so it just is a fascinating element of the stories. So it's not in the, I will tell you, the triggers in the relationship, the abusive relationship one, aren't high. It happened very quickly in the story, but again, you don't want somebody that has that in their past to have that unaware. So I just want you guys to know it's in there, but don't miss reading that one. She's got a new one coming out later this year that I'm really excited about too. So, and this is Allison's next one. This is book number 1 of a series that Barber Publishing's doing called Doors to the Past. And it's different stories of America, and some of them are stories that are about places that are rumored to be haunted and other things like that. So they're a little bit of a creep factor, and I have to admit with this one, I can do that. No, doesn't work. But anyways, they do that with books nowadays in libraries. So it's very weird. Things I don't get sidetracked on, huh? So anyways, this one actually is a ghost story. It's set in San Antonio, which is where Allison is from. And it's about a young lady in the past who runs away from a family of her husband who has just passed away, and she's trying to hide from them. She's also trying to basically find a new husband because she doesn't have any money. And then, of course, the main story is somebody that is fascinated with her story. And so you kind of visit it from both perspectives. But there's a couple parts in there that was like, yeah, I won't be reading that part in the dark by myself. So just be forewarned, it does not promote like, ghost or any of that. It does have a good, strong Christian element to it. So you can see the battle there, but it doesn't make it any less creepy, especially if your house is old and then you're reading a scary part and then the house creaks. That's always fun. So, anyways, so there's more of those to come. In fact, I think the next one is due out soon if it's not already on my shelf. And if it is, I apologize to, I think it's Peppers. So those will be coming out. They can be read in any order. Just like the True Colors series they've been doing. I think I've talked about a couple of those in the past. Susie's book, The Stories That Bind Us. I wanted to mention this one, even though it came out like closer to when, the pandemic was hitting. I think things were just starting to open up when this one came out, but great story, deals with grief. It also deals with a little bit of racism. It's set in the 60s, was just a fun book to read. So of course you have the Vietnam era in there. But the main character, Betty Sweet, you're going to fall in love with her. I don't want to replace my grandmother, but I would like to have another one so I could have Betty too. So again, just a wonderful little story that you're just going to enjoy it. It's just real life and what was it like and how do we deal with these things that were happening at that time. We look back at the 60s and think all this history was happening. What is that now? 60 or 40, 60 years ago. Yeah. And it's like, and we go, that's a lot of history. We're living that now. We got great grandkids that are going to be reading about us now or next. So, okay. And here's a sad note. It used to be the 60s were considered contemporary stories. They're not anymore. They're historical. Book number 2 of the Windy City Saga, The Shadows of the White City. And I have to look at that because I do say it's shadows in the White City. I can't tell you. I said it right to Jocelyn's face when I was talking to her one time about her book. And I'm like, oh, when you get it wrong to the author, it's very embarrassing. But I'm trying to think of the first one. It had a pink color, but it cover to it. But anyways, read them in order. You're going to want to in this series, even though they take place several years apart. You're going to need the first part to know some of the story for the second part. And this one actually centers on Sylvie, and a young lady that she adopts as her daughter. And then that young lady goes to find her family, her birth family, and what is their story. So very well done. I always like Jocelyn's books because they're definitely very historical. There is some romance in it, but it's not a major storyline, and that I appreciate. And it is about the World's Fair and some of the background because one of the characters is one of the escorts or somebody that is helping somebody at the World's Fair try to find something. So you get to hear some of the background to that. So it's kind of fun. This is a debut author that has gone against the Amanda rule. This is Jennifer. And I'm not even going to try that last name because I have not heard it pronounced yet. So I don't want to slaughter it. But A Dance in Donegal. When you can't travel anywhere, all you want to do is travel. At least I do. I have a severe travel bug and I love to travel. Ireland is on my list of places I want to go. And I can't wait to get there. We plan on it. Again, the pandemic has slowed us down a little bit, but that's okay. We'll be fine with that. But this one took me to Ireland. I enjoyed every minute of all the descriptions of it. And Jennifer did a great job of making sure things that you could, while reading it, you can almost hear, smell, or feel them. She talked about the air and how it was cold and, the smell of the peat that they used in their fireplaces and things like that. So I really enjoyed it. It is the story of Maura. She actually goes back to a small village in Ireland that her mother is from and becomes a school teacher there. And why did she go back? So, which I really enjoyed. So sorry, I had to move my books as I wandered off stage there, so to speak. So I have not had a chance to read this one, but it came in the other day and I was hoping to get an advance copy. And I have not yet, but it's by Melody Dobson. It's a World War II book, and I will get it read. I'll probably do a little bit better review on it in October. Whether we do those virtual or in person this year, we'll find out. But Melody has been writing these really good World War II books that I have thoroughly enjoyed. And this one is about Hannah, and she works as an archaeologist for the Third Reich. And she's looking for the Holy Grail that will prove that the Aryan nation is correct. And they are right. But what she finds is other things instead that conflict with what she's being told. So very interesting. It is a dual time. It's set the dual part of it is 80 years later, so close to contemporary times, and how that combines together. So I'm looking forward to reading that one because Melody is always good. Read them in any order. There isn't a series there. One of my favorite new authors, she came out, I want to say about 4 years ago. Might be a little bit more than that. She writes some fabulous biblical fiction, Connellan Cassette. And all her series are on that have major parts in the Bible, but she tells the little story on it. She talks about leaving Egypt and what was that like, whether you were Jewish or part of the Egyptian people that, maybe went with them and things like that. So it gives a little bit different perspective on it. And this is actually in the Covenant House series, book number 1. It has been selling like hotcakes. we have really had a hard time keeping up with it. So I'm really looking forward to book number 2. This is 8 years ago after the Philistines surrendered, the stolen Ark of the Covenant. So it gives you a different perspective on that. So, and the thing I really like about her books is her characters, male or female, are very biblically true. Now, they don't exist in the Bible, but if you would read the Bible passages that deal with the story, if it comes in, if the Bible passage comes in, it's true to the passage. It doesn't vary from that. I'm trying to think of a good example. And the only one I can think of is when they were leaving Egypt and they were talking about the blood of the lamb and on the door and such. And I mean, she goes by what the Bible said. So that to me is just really good research and making sure you got it correct. All That We Carried by Erin Bartels. This is a really interesting story about 2 sisters. It's set in the Porcupine Mountains in Michigan. If you're not from Michigan or not familiar with it, that's in our UP. I have never hiked the Porcupine Mountains, but I have seen them. How's that? Does that count? But I'm not also one of those that I'm going to get a backpack and I'm not going to go out in the wilderness. And I'm more of a stay in a condo where it's air conditioned and running water and things. So this isn't my type of book that way. But I really liked it, even though it is a story of 2 sisters that were estranged from each other, because me and my sister are very close. Books like this are hard for me to read because it makes me sad when somebody's not close to their siblings, because me and my siblings actually are all real close and I enjoy that. But 10 years ago, they lost their parents. And then as they went through the grieving process, they kind of divided from each other, and what caused that divide, what caused that split. And so a little bit of a nod to the Mary and Martha part of the story. There's always the one that wants to listen, and then there's the one that wants to do. And so that makes for an interesting combination, which I imagine if Mary and Martha were alive, they would say, you know what, that does sound like us. So that makes for a good read. So I like the tie in there. So I'm going to say this, and it doesn't give a lot away because you find out really early. One of the characters does believe in a lot of things. And it'll tell you why in the book, and I'll let you read that part. Just know they're not promoting those other religions. They promote Erin, I should say, promotes Christianity. So you don't have to worry about when she's talking about it. There's a lot that goes on, but just don't worry about that part of it, because I had somebody ask me about that one time in the store. Oh, somebody told me they talked about this and this and this. Well, yes, but no. Okay, so just be safe in that. So, but I wanted you to know it was in there. It was either last year or the year before that Todd Threadgill came out with Collision of Lies. Straight up mystery. Really good, great characters. This is the sequel to it, Network of Deceit. We get back together with our wonderful Amara, and back to Texas we go, where it's very hot. And boy, they talk about the heat here, and I've experienced heat in Texas. It's something else. So anyway, so you get that there too, but it's just a straight up mystery. This time there's a young man, he's found killed at the water park. And so, and who did it and why? So very, very good. Also, even though the main character is female, I have a lot of guy readers of that series. So just know that he writes the female character very believable. She doesn't need to be rescued, which I really like, because I have read other straight mysteries where the female is very strong until there's a guy in the area, and then it's like, oh, you should help me. So I really like that he does not do that. She is very capable of taking care of herself, and I really appreciate that. So my next one is Irene Hannon, Blackberry Beach, which I believe, just because of the name, I want to go live there. But I don't want to live in Oregon, so that makes it a little harder. But anyways, this is part of the Hope Harbor series. For those of you that have been reading these are more of a contemporary story. They call them women's fiction. There usually can be a small mystery in there, I think, just because Irene writes them all the time with her romantic suspense that she enjoys including it. But it's not usually anything major. It's just a small part of the storyline. So in this one, you have Catherine Parker and Zach Garrett. And the issues they have together. And I'm trying to think back, and I cannot remember, and I bet you one of you guys would help me with this. I can't remember which book they're part of, and they would have been a very small minor character. So you can read these in any order you want. In fact, I have read several of them out of order. just know that sometimes your characters are going to cross, but it's usually a background character. So you're not really giving anything away. So now this next book, and I'm going to grab a sip here a minute, actually is a book by Jerry Jenkins, but it's based on the videos called The Chosen. I don't know if any of you have been reading them. From what I understand, and people, they change their minds all the time. You guys know that they're going to be, each video that's out there, they're going to do a book form of the video. This one is I Have Called You by Name, which is book number 1. So it should go with book or video number 1. I have not delved that much into it, so I'm not 100% sure. But no, it's Jerry Jenkins. It's very good writing. I really enjoyed this story. It's very biblically based, which, it's hard to find sometimes when you have one that is well written, when it's based on something else that's already out there. So he takes a screenplay and then he makes it into a novel. And sometimes when you get those, it doesn't translate well, for a lack of a better way to put it. So, but I know a lot of people have been enjoying those videos, and so they are looking forward to reading those books. We've already have sold quite a few of them. So I don't know how many they're doing. I don't know how many videos they're doing. So, and if your library is interested, we have been able to start selling the videos. I know that in the past has been a problem because the people filming them were having trouble getting them and distribute them. So now the bookstores are carrying them. So we should have copies of at least video number 1 here in the store when you guys come visit. So Miss Dupree, or My Dear Miss Dupree, Grace Hickok, and she has actually written several other titles. She loves writing historical romance, and this one reminds me of The Bachelor and The Bachelorette. And because our Miss Dupree here has to find a new husband, and her dad is pushing her to marry for wealth, of course, and she wants to marry for love. There are some very funny laugh out loud parts of this, but there's also, it speaks to a little bit of the woman's heart of, let me choose the one I want. So which makes it good, that good debate in there. So this is book number 1 of the series called The American Royalty. So it'll be fun to see what else we get here. So we're getting to the bottom of the pile here. The next one I just wanted to mention Beverly Lewis, because she's still writing good books, whether they're Amish or not, doesn't matter. She's a good writer. And so this one, our main character is Anna, has been living in Lancaster, and she works as a tour guide. And so, of course, then our handsome Mennonite tour guide is her friend. So she's writing standalones now, which I found interesting because she's been doing series for so many years. So some of the people in there you might recognize. She has been pulling some of her background characters. She does have a new one coming out, and I think it's in June, might be July. Now that I've said June out loud, it might be July of this year. So look for that one also. So, and then Courtney Walsh, she has a series called The Nantucket Love Story. And I'm going to quick look in the book if I can get any of the other titles, but this one isn't any wonder. And it's about two, friends, and they make a pact that they're going to meet back together on a certain day and on their golden birthday, which is July 30th. And compare their life and see how they have each gotten on. So it makes for an interesting read. So, of course, if for any other reason, is one of the Nantucket love stories too. So heavy romance, but that's what Courtney Walsh, but there is some issues in there. And that's what I think I like about, I know that's why I like Courtney's books, because they have those in there and things you deal with. So especially those, reaching the age of 30 and as they enter, middle age and such. So they feel the strain of not either being married or jobs, or you're not following your dreams. So I think that's an interesting thing to put into the fiction books and talk about that a little bit. So, and hopefully it leads to discussions too. So Courtney is always fun to read. Like I said, heavy romance, but there's a lot of good story in there too. So The Paris Dressmaker, which I think wins one of the covers awards for the year, just beautiful. Christy Cambron is back. This is a dual time. It is 1939, and then the second dual time is 1943. So again, really close, but it is different characters. It's not just the same person back and forth. So it does deal with the dressmaker in Paris as Hitler comes in and helping Jews escape. So kind of hold your breath. Christy always has good research on the setting of where she is, and that I really enjoy. And I had the privilege of being in Paris, so it was kind of fun to read about some of the stuff that I had seen, Notre Dame and the Eiffel Tower and such. So that's always fun when you can kind of put where things are in a book. And then not because it's last for any reason. I mean, none of these books are in any order for any reason. You know me, I just kind of, oh, there's a book and I should put it on my list. So that's the only reason. So this is the only reason sooner or later I had to end, because we could go on for a long time and then you guys would be bored out of your minds. So, but anyways, The Orchard House and by Heidi, and I can never say her last name, so I'm not going to slaughter it here. But I love this book because it has the author of one of my favorite books, Little Women, in it. Louise May Alcott is part of the 3 dual times that Heidi writes about. It's so 1865, then it's also in 2001, and then 2019. And it talks about, how the book Little Women affect people now. I know I just watched the new remake of the movie, and I like the movies and I like the book, which is very rare for me that I like a movie as much as a book. I've never liked the movie better than the book, but sometimes as much as, and it's just a neat way to read through that book. But to watch that be tied into history and to be tied into contemporary was just fun to read. Heidi's books are always just an interesting read. She usually does a dual or tri-time, which always makes for keeping track of characters a little more exciting. But 1865, it's the Civil War era, so we know where we are in history. So that is my list for you shopping here. We'll have these titles here. Excuse me, and I know that they have put a list of our books online for you to also download, so you can follow along here. So bring your list along. Like I said, I'll make sure I have copies of everything available. If you're not able to come that time, I believe we'll have a promo code for you that you can use during that Friday on our website. So I am looking forward to seeing you. I don't think I have anything else. Like I said, most of you know our email address, not my web address. That'd be silly. Chris.Jager is Jager at bakerbookhouse.com. And then Jessica's is Jessica, JESSICA .moore, MOORE at bakerbookhouse.com. So if you have any questions at all, just let us know. But we will both be here on that Friday during the day. So when you're here shopping, we'll be glad to help you then. So we will see you all then. So thank you.